On September 16, 2022, 22-year-old Mahsa Jina Amini died while in custody of the government's morality police for wearing improper hijab. This sent shockwaves throughout Iran. A massive protest movement commenced in response as Iranians demanded justice for Amini and equal rights for women. My name is Sydney Martin, and I'm the program manager and a researcher here at the Iran 1400 Project. I recently conducted interviews with a variety of scholars about the woman life freedom movement. Here's what they had to say.
I would say that the most positive impact of the woman life freedom movement in Iran has been the increased awakening of the population to the plight of women, and the fact that so many women are now going to public places without their hijabs, despite the continuation of the repression and the laws against the violation of hijab rules. The fact that women and men together joined in these protests is highly significant. In this movement, the issue of defending women's rights has been tied in with opposing gender and state violence, opposing the death penalty, opposing mass incarceration, and opposing authoritarian education and censorship. The majority of the protesters have been youth, including high school students from working class families. In fact, the majority of the participants are from the working class. At the university level, students try to end gender segregation in cafeterias. They were severely attacked by the administrations, but they nevertheless tried it. The protests have also shown that women from oppressed national minorities, such as the Kurds and the Baluchis, are actively engaged in articulating feminist demands. The statements from the Dastgoharan feminist group organized by the Baluch women were some of the most radical feminist statements issued during the fall of 2022 and the winter of 2023. As far as the negative effects are concerned, I would say the most obvious of the negative effects have been the increased state brutality. Over 20,000 were arrested, over 500 were killed. Protesters have been shot in the eyes or genitals deliberately. Many have been raped and tortured in prison, and 7 men were publicly executed. Well, the violent repression by the state police and the army has been a huge obstacle. In addition to the arrests, murders, rapes, and tortures, the state either directly or indirectly promoted the poisoning of thousands of schoolgirls throughout the country. And there have also been reports of young people who were tortured, raped in prison, and some of them committed suicide after release. There have been some powerful statements of demands issued by various feminist groups, and a statement of minimum demands of independent Iranian unions and civil society organizations issued on the anniversary of the 1979 revolution. And that statement of minimum demands, as well as the feminist statements, have tried to articulate the goals and vision of this movement. The minimum demands include an end to the death penalty and the immediate release of all political prisoners. They also include, and this is a direct paraphrasing, immediate legal equality of women and men in all political, economic, social, cultural, and familial arenas, the unconditional abolition of all discriminatory laws and customs against sexual and gender identity and orientation, the recognition of the rainbow LGBTQ+ community, decriminalization of all gender identities and orientations, and unconditional adherence to all the rights of women to control their own body and their own future without any patriarchal control. This again is from that statement of minimum demands of independent Iranian unions and civil society organizations. So these have been amazing statements. However, I would say that the statements do not explain how we can go from the articulation of principles and goals to the actual organization of ways of getting there. I think this is a wonderful question. And all the questions so far have been really great. Considering the militarism and brutality of Iran's authoritarian religious fundamentalist state, it is very difficult to do anything without overthrowing the current regime. We need an overthrow by the people themselves that goes hand in hand with creating the conditions for freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly and organization, and democratic debates about the alternative, and time to prepare for free elections. The Iranian regime relies heavily on arms and nuclear technology from Russia and economic alliances with China. It just joined the BRICS alliance, which BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So it just joined the BRICS alliance, which also added Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia. And being part of the BRICS alliance can really strengthen the Iranian regime at a time when it is collapsing economically. So that is very worrisome, that it's getting the support from, to promote its authoritarian policies and practices. Given the situation, the Iranian progressive opposition, I think, has to reach out to progressives from countries that suffer from Iran's military interventions. Countries such as Ukraine, given that Iran is building drones and missiles for Russia to continue to use in its invasion of Ukraine. So as I mentioned earlier, solidarity, progressives need to reach out to progressives from countries that suffer from Iran's military interventions, countries such as Ukraine, Syria, and Iraq. We also need to actively seek bonds of solidarity with Russian progressives who oppose the Putin regime and Chinese progressive dissidents. So that's on the international level. On the national level, Iranian progressives need to articulate practical steps for recognizing the rights of oppressed minorities. This includes the linguistic rights of national minorities and the right to participate in discussing and deciding how to use and preserve the natural resources in their regions, without specifically addressing the rights of national minorities. Goals such as simply calling an end to discrimination remain abstract. And confronting discrimination also means addressing the rights of the Afghan population, especially Afghan women. Concerning gender rights, The feminist statements issued in the months since September have been very comprehensive and have articulated many of the practical steps that need to be taken. These statements have called for free and equal quality education for women and men at all levels without gender segregation, women's equal participation in the social, political, and economic sphere, reproductive and abortion rights, divorce and custody rights, banning female genital mutilation, banning child marriage and polygamy, criminalizing gender violence and sexual harassment, categorizing domestic work as onerous labor requiring better compensation, and legal and health services for incarcerated women. Some feminists have argued that demands cannot be left at the minimum civil society level, but must include human rights, including oppressed national, religious, and sexual minorities, as well as migrants, mostly Afghans, and to advocate social justice and positive discrimination, which in the US we call affirmative action. Some have also opposed any call for the legalization of sex work, but advocate decriminalizing sex workers. These feminists oppose exploitation and specifically exploitation of working women, while also advocating the socialization of domestic labor. Concerning the environment, we have a lot of work to do to figure out how to exit an economy based on oil and gas production, and how to clean up the environment and find a solution to the enormous problem of water shortage, soil erosion, and the problem of buildings that have not been built to withstand earthquakes in an earthquake-prone country. So to sum up, I would say that as a socialist feminist, I think any ideational transformation needs to begin with not really having illusions about the possibility of a magical, successful, liberal capitalist democracy at a time when Western liberal capitalist democracies themselves are seriously challenged by the rise of authoritarianism and fascism around the world. We need to do anything possible to bring about the conditions for basic democratic freedom